This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Great days start with great underwear. So if you're looking for something special, give Tommy John and gift a better day. Everything we make is meticulously crafted from breathable stretch fabric for the perfect fit, including our sleepwear for him and her. It feels good to give, but it feels great to give Tommy John. Find something for everyone and pick up something for yourself. Because at Tommy John, greatness is in our very fabric. Don't miss Tommy John's Cyber Monday sale. Save 40% site-wide at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
This is the Daily Blast from the New Republic, produced and presented by the DSR Network. I'm your host, Greg Sargent. The New Yorker has published some extraordinary new revelations about Pete Hegseth, who's Donald Trump's nominee for defense secretary. These include allegations of extreme serial drunkenness, financial mismanagement of a nonprofit he ran, and an alleged episode of him chanting, "Kill all Muslims." This, along with the nominations of the highly unqualified Kash Patel as FBI director and Tulsi Gabbard for a top intelligence post, raise a question. Do Senate Democrats have what it takes to really make revelations like these stick in upcoming confirmation hearings? We're chatting today to Tara McGowan, a progressive media executive who frequently urges Democrats to get more serious about fighting the information wars, something that will become even more essential during a second Trump presidency. Thanks so much for coming on, Tara.
Thanks, Greg.
So Pete Hegseth was president of a group called Concerned Veterans for America from 2013 to 2016. The New Yorker's Jane Mayer obtained a whistleblower's report about his tenure that includes frequent bouts of serious public intoxication and him and his management team sexually pursuing female staffers. One whistleblower email said he used company funds for partying on the road. At one point, he tried to dance with strippers on stage at a strip club, allegedly. His representative kind of denies this stuff. Tara, what do you make of all of it?
What do I make of all of it? Well, I definitely wouldn't have a open container near him at a party or a bar. I wouldn't trust him around my girlfriends or my female cousins. You just have to take it from his mother, who a letter was leaked from his mother to him about how horrible he treats women. But all of these allegations, which are really, really, really concerning and horrible, despite all of those, he also doesn't have any of the experience to run the largest department of our federal government and the most well-funded one that, their job is to strategically deploy our armed services to protect our country and protect democracy abroad. And so we know that a character test is not one that Trump or his allies or his administration has ever cared about. So I think that these allegations are really concerning, but I also don't want it to get lost in these allegations just how unqualified he also is professionally. He doesn't sound like a good guy by all of those merits, if you will, but also he's deeply unqualified. He is a Fox News host, and he is just a strong ally of Trump, which is, the common thread of all of the nominations that Trump has put forward.
Well, yeah, speaking of not losing some of the big picture stuff here, for Senate Democrats, you'd think this is a target-rich environment. You've got Kash Patel, who's totally unqualified to run the FBI, has publicly talked about wanting to prosecute Trump's enemies and the media. Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, is an active pusher of pro-Putin talking points. Now the revelations about Hegseth. Senate Democrats really could make a lot out of this at the hearings if that were done well. So what would it look like if it were done well?
Yeah, and I hope that they do make a lot of this, because I think what's probably happening in closed doors amongst Senate Democrats is a conversation of where do they want to channel their most fire in a strategic way to actually be able to knock down one or two of these nominations, right? I think there's probably a lot of calculated conversations happening about where they actually can make some progress here and where they need to preserve their energy or their rage, so it isn't ineffective. And I think that that's actually the wrong calculation. It's certainly not one that Republicans or the right-wing media heed on their own, right? They take a flood the zone approach. There isn't anything that Democrats do that they don't like, that they don't make noise about in some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't seem to really hurt them or muddle the story that reaches the audiences that they intend to reach, or even influences the mainstream media. And so while I completely understand from a pragmatic perspective that Senate Democrats won't be able to cancel all of these appointments, and there are so many that are really, really, really horrifying on their face in terms of what they'll do, I don't think that that should preclude them from actually going full force against them in all of the ways that they can communicate, so the American people know exactly who Trump and his team are putting forward. I think that the American people, especially the millions and millions of them that did not vote for this administration, he was not given a mandate with the small margin of victory he had in the battleground states or even the popular vote, they would like to see some fight in our leaders and in the Democratic Party.
The New Yorker piece quotes Senator Richard Blumenthal, who heads the Armed Services Committee, which will hold the hearing on Hegseth. Blumenthal says some of the right things, pointing out how dangerous it would be to put someone this erratic and unpredictable as head of such a large organization. But then Blumenthal also says, and I thought this was a tell, this shouldn't be a partisan thing because our national security is at stake. Now, Tara, I get why Blumenthal says that, but it just seems wrong. It seems weirdly apologetic, as if he feels the need to justify making an issue out of revelations that clearly show Hegseth to be wildly unfit. I mean, does that sort of suggest that Democrats still don't quite have their heads on straight about what's needed right now, or am I just being uncharitable?
No, I don't think you're being uncharitable, and I don't think that it's specific to Senator Blumenthal, who I have great respect for. I actually think it is doing a massive disservice to what we are all up against, all as in everyone who cares about this country and cares about democracy and cares about preserving and strengthening rather than dismantling our institutions that protect the most vulnerable of us. And that's what they exist for in this country, to be able to say that calling out actual real unqualifications and really, really, really terrible, character traits and allegations that you wouldn't want to be of, the substitute teachers in your kids' schools or the folks that are babysitting your kids, by calling that partisan, to have a real public fight about these cabinet picks, that's doing a real disservice. That's surrendering. I think that's really problematic because this isn't actually about partisanship. And the second that you qualify your argument that is based on real hard data and evidence and, police reports against a cabinet pick, when you declare that as partisan, you have made it partisan. Right?
I mean, in a way, he's kind of right. He's not saying it's partisan, but by sort of entertaining the possibility that someone would dismiss it that way, he's conceding too much up front. He's too apologetic right at the outset.
That's my biggest fear in general, is that Democrats are conceding already. We can't concede. We need to show a unified front against this administration. And also, we need to take them at their word. Every single talking point that was on Democrats' mouth before Election Day, quoting Trump, saying he would be a dictator on day one. These were out of Democrats' mouths, right? And it was true. These were things that Trump has said if we are still not taking them at their word, we're not only like conceding, we are also, not we, Democrats that are doing that are also demonstrating that they don't have a spine, and they are reinforcing a narrative that I think a lot of Americans believe, which is that both sides are full of it.
If I understand you correctly, Tara, you're basically saying that they're making their own previous rhetoric out to be hollow.
Yes, and also it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, we know that Trump is going to do everything that he said that he is going to do. We know that there is limited, like, this is the only defense I will give Senate Democrats in these cabinet fights, is that there is little political capital here, right? If they go full nuclear on every single one of these candidates, they run the risk of pushing some of the Republicans who might be willing to vote against some of these folks away. Like, I understand that pragmatic calculation. I just also think that we need to see real strength of leadership in the Democrats in Congress, because they are the ones who are at the front lines of this fight, which frankly is solely an information war moving forward come January. They do not have power in federal government starting in mid-January. And so we actually need to know that they are up for this fight and that they're not going to concede, because these are not people you can negotiate with. They're just
critical
simply not.
point. Yes, critical point. When you don't have power, the information wars become even more central. In fact, there's kind of a broader thing here at stake, and this is something your friend and mine, Simon Rosenberg, has talked about. It's whether Democrats are able to reimagine their roles as public communicators in a way more in sync with the Trump era. Like, you have some House Democrats who kind of know how to do this, or really know how to do it well. Jamie Raskin, Adam Schiff, soon to be California Senator, Eric Swalwell, AOC, Maxwell Frost. I'm probably leaving a few out. But Senate Democrats, I think. What's that?
Jasmine in Texas.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And I think Senate Democrats are behind here. What's your sense of why that is, and what can be done about it? Don't we need Senate Democrats to kind of learn from some of their House counterparts?
We do. I think that we do. And I don't know the exact reason. I have some theories. I think that the seniority rules ethos is much more dominant in the Senate, and I think that does a great disservice. I think that people do fall into line behind leadership more so than in the House, where more people are willing to stand out and understand that the way they can communicate can actually increase their exposure to their message and their platform. And I think that senators, for one, most of them have just been there too long, frankly, and they don't understand the information ecosystem, and they don't know, frankly, how to leverage it to their or collective advantage. And that's why we desperately need new, younger, and more diverse leadership in the Senate, because they do know how to communicate and leverage this power. And once again, the only real power that they're going to have is the power of their communications over the next few years. And so they've got to get sharper about it. And we didn't see that in this past election cycle, frankly. We didn't see that leadership, especially in the Senate, really understands how the world has changed and how people communicate today. And the fact that you need to be authentic. You need to be authentic, you need to be bold, and you need to be really, really honest. And I think that there is still too much performative communications that happens in the Senate. And I think it might just be the result of folks that have just been there too long, and or taking the lead of the folks that have been there the longest.
With the election of Donald Trump, staying informed is more important than ever, and we're thankful you've chosen to listen to the DSR Network. Through the turbulent times ahead, we will continue to provide the insightful expert analysis on the issues that matter most around the world. We ask that you consider becoming a member to support our effort to provide you the best content possible. DSR members gain access to an ad-free listening experience, exclusive members-only segments of our shows, our members-only Discord community, and more. Use code HOLIDAY25 to get 50% off of your membership subscription at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. That's code HOLIDAY25 at thedsrnetwork.com/buy. The DSR network will evolve in exciting ways in the new year, and we hope you'll join us.
Great days start with great underwear. So if you're looking for something special, give Tommy John and gift a better day. Everything we make is meticulously crafted from breathable stretch fabric for the perfect fit, including our sleepwear for him and her. It feels good to give, but it feels great to give Tommy John. Find something for everyone and pick up something for yourself, because at Tommy John, greatness is in our very fabric. Don't miss Tommy John's Cyber Monday sale. Save 40% site-wide at TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
Yes, it sure seems that way. I mean, I wonder whether Adam Schiff joining the Senate Democratic Caucus could help. He's not exactly in the mold of a Maxwell Frost or an AOC. There's a clear distinction there, but he's been really one of the best communicators throughout the Trump era, I think, especially at crystallizing in social media friendly ways why Trump is such a threat to the country. And I think we're going to need that more and more. Don't you think Schiff could potentially have a positive influence there?
Oh, absolutely. And, I think Schiff is a good example of why there isn't one size fits all to being a good communicator. It really is a bit about being your authentic self, right? Like he is steady. He's a statesman and he is steady, but he is very good at breaking things down. And he does convey a lot of trust, right? Which I think is so, so important because it doesn't seem like he's performing or just sticking to, prepackaged, tested talking points. And that's what people want. So he doesn't have to be, out there with his arm raised, yelling like Jamie Raskin, who I adore, to also convey a point. But we just need more people to step into their power and in their voice and do it in a way where they're unified, but they're not all saying the same thing, because that isn't authentic and that really loses people.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. They have to find their own voices in a way that's in sync with the era. I mean, let's talk about some of the opportunities Democrats have right now. Take Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General. Senate Democrats could theoretically put up on a screen some of the worst and most violent episodes from the January 6th riots, like attacks on cops, then ask Bondi point blank, would you support it if Trump pardoned that guy right there? I mean, that's just sort of an example, right, of what you could do. And the Hegseth thing seems to offer pretty big opportunities. Like, put up on a screen some of these insane episodes and say, how on earth is this guy qualified to run an organization like this one?
Yes, and make it sticky, right? Like, I think that Democrats actually, I think not just Democrats, it was bipartisan, but I do think that the January 6th hearings were very good at making good content that people want to watch and share. And I think we need Senate Democrats to understand, and I think many of them do and will, I hope, but that they can create moments that do go viral online, that do inform more people of what's going on by being, again, authentic in their voice and power, but upping the ante a little bit, like being a little theatrical with it while making these points, because they have to be visual and they have to be surprising. And nothing about watching a boring hearing with just back and forth Q&A and them saying, like basically pleading the fifth in their own ways over and over again is going to actually get any traction. So I do hope that Senate Democrats understand that this is a made for TV / really TikTok moment and experience, and that they heed that.
If I hear one Senate Democrat during these hearings say anything like, my friends on the other side of the aisle, I'll just absolutely vomit on the spot.
What friends? Exactly.
Right. If you were to look at it charitably, right, you could sort of say, okay, maybe Senate Democrats have a somewhat well-founded fear of looking too political. Maybe they think they're going to provoke a backlash among swing voters or whatever. But if you look at the January 6th committee hearings, right, those were among the greatest acts of political communication in our lifetimes. They were very well produced, really well tailored to the viral era, and they were very goddamn partisan. Right? I mean, they indicted a whole party. They put on display for the country what's so craven about the Republican Party in the Trump era. Created moments, drama, and so forth. So, we should learn from that, shouldn't we?
Yes. I mean, I think part of it was that it did still have a feeling of nonpartisan of sorts because they had Liz Cheney there. It was really well designed at that point in time. And so it really was also about an event, right? And Trump as opposed to the party. I think this is trickier because we have a lot of people for very good reasons, if not outdated, who are in these positions of power because they deeply, deeply believe in the role of government and in the way that they conduct business or believe business should be conducted. The challenge there is that that is not how Republicans play. That is not how Republicans govern anymore. That is certainly not how this administration is going to govern. And so, I used to have this beef with Biden sometimes, President Biden, who I deeply respect and think was a tremendous president. But always taking the high road does not always lead us where we need to go. And in fact, quite the opposite we've seen now. All of the bipartisan bills that were passed, guess what? The fact that they were passed with some Republicans didn't do Democrats any favors. And part of that was a communications problem, but part of it was that people actually want to see you fight for things. They want to see you stand for things. And I don't believe that there are bipartisan solutions that are going to get passed under this administration. I think that, number one, Democrats don't have any power in the House, Senate, White House, or Supreme Court moving into next year. And so there isn't going to be gridlock, but that means that their sole job is to communicate to the American people in every single way possible what this administration is doing, who's doing it, and to make it as painful as possible for them so they do less of it. That's really all they can do.
To wrap this up, Tara, how should they do that with these Hegseth revelations and everything else we know about Hegseth?
I mean, I think that they just need to flood the zone. They need to not pick battles publicly, even if they're having private conversations, to understand where they're actually going to have more leverage when it comes to the appointments. But they need to be publicly flooding the zone and going after every single one of these appointees that is disqualified and just frankly not good people and not trustworthy people to lead our institutions, and to be relentless about it. And also, let's just talk about tactically, to do it in ways that are actually going to reach people and that are going to drive engagement, which isn't going to be just a press release or a statement in a New York Times or Washington Post or Wall Street Journal article. That's not enough. They should be all making videos like AOC does. They should all be talking about this stuff every day, and they should be doing it in a way that is conversational with the American people, not talking point driven. I could go on for an hour about the advice that I would give these folks. They haven't taken it for many years, most of them, but this is what they have to build muscle, because this is truly the only power and authority they have moving forward, is to communicate and make these decisions and make these appointments very difficult and painful for this administration. And so we get slightly less terrible folks in charge of these agencies.
And look, the Hegseth revelations, they are tailor-made for this type of communication. They're colorful as all hell. They're jarring. They're, really kind of riveting in a car crash kind of way. They could be doing a lot with this kind of stuff in the formats you're talking about. Tara McGowan, let's hope they listen to you this time.
Thank you.
Folks, make sure to check out some new content we have up at TNR.com. Michael Tomasky arguing that Trump is going to corrupt the Department of Justice so thoroughly that we'll be entering a world where the rule of law is essentially turned inside out. And James Robbins looking at how Joe Biden, of all people, is trashing international law. And tune in to the latest episode of Above Average Intelligence over on the DSR Network, featuring Shane Harris of The Atlantic, to discuss the national security implications of Trump's cabinet appointments. We'll see you all tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Daily Blast with me, your host, Greg Sargent. The Daily Blast is a New Republic podcast and is produced by Riley Fessler on the DSR Network.